Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the partnership signing agreement within Parahyangan Catholic University and European Union delegation to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam, followed by a special guest lecture by His Excellency Denis Chaibi, Ambassador for Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam. It's wonderful to see so many passionate individuals here and institutions who share the same vision for a more collaborative future. My name is Anissa and I'm honored to be your today's host. On behalf of Parahyangan Catholic University, it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to His Excellency Denis Chaibi, the Ambassador for Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam, and to Pak Stephen Meshati, the Deputy of Head of Mission, and Bu Annelien van Landerheim, which supposedly joined us this morning from the EEAS, Political Advisor from the European External Action Service. Also, good morning for our Rector, Professor Insinyur Tri Basuki Yuwono, PhD, and also our Vice Rector for Academics and Student Affairs, Professor Hengki Mulyana, PhD, and our Vice Rector for Cooperation, Alumni and Business, Insinyur Katarina Badra Nawang Palupi, PhD, and also Secretary of the University, Sylvia Yazid, PhD, and our moderator for today's guest lecture, actually. Today marked a momentous occasion as we gather to celebrate here an exciting, we call this new chapter, because we start throwback to a year ago, we start the discussion to hold this event together with the EU delegation, with Pak Stephen here, Meshati, what are the possibilities of collaboration. And since then, our conversation have grown into a more, it's expanding beyond not just UNPAR, but also to include many more universities here in Bandung. So it's been quite a journey in building this connection, sharing ideas while exploring new opportunities. As we finally here today, I can honestly say that UNPAR feels incredibly honored to be at the heart of this cooperation. And we are excited about the future collaborations that lie ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin the event and in observance of our nation's values and principles, we would like to start by playing our national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Following that, this would be special. We will also play the Ode to Joy, the anthem of European Union, to honor our collaboration with the European Union delegation. I kindly ask all the attendees to rise for the anthems. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You may now be seated. A little bit story of our collaboration. This is where we are today, but our journey began actually when UNPAR was officially selected as the coordinating institution for the Erasmus Plus Capacity Building in Higher Education program. So this program focuses on fostering collaboration to support the transformation of higher education. And being chosen for this important role was quite a significant milestone for us, and we're proud to have been entrusted with such a responsibility, especially considering that Indonesia has only been selected as the coordinator for this Erasmus Plus 3 times, and UNPAR has had the honor of doing it twice. So it's amazing. So therefore, this is a remarkable occasion for us as we have our ambassador here, His Excellency Denis Chaibi, and also this event represents something bigger, something that has the potential to expand, I would say, and deepen collaboration. We also have some universities here in Bandung, so it's both locally and also internationally with other universities in Europe. So as we continue to nurture this partnership with the EU, we also hope that UNPAR will serve as a bridge connecting more universities in Bandung and beyond, so that we can all work together in addressing global challenges. That was also the theme of the talk today, while also creating new opportunities for academic exchange. So today is just one step that we hope it will be much broader and enduring collaboration. We will now begin the formal part of the event. It's my honor to invite our rector of Parahyangan Catholic University, Professor Insinyur Tri Basuki Yuwono, PhD, to come to the stage and deliver the opening remarks.
Good morning, EU Ambassador to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam, His Excellency Denis Chaibi, Deputy Head of Mission EU Delegation to Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam, Stefan Francois Mesati, all participants, all colleges, welcome to UNPAR, Sampurasun. It is a great honor and sincere pleasure for us to welcome Your Excellency to Universitas Katolik Parahyangan, our home of learning, dialogue, and shared values. Today marks a meaningful and historic moment for us. The signing of the Memorandum of Understanding between the European Union and UNPAR is a proof of continuity. UNPAR has long been engaged with the European Union, particularly through our active collaborations with academic and governmental institutions of member countries of the European Union. In the past few years, UNPAR Academic has also actively involved in the Erasmus Plus Capacity Building in Higher Education program. This collaboration have allowed us to grow, to innovate, and to connect academically, institutionally, and personally. As we celebrate our 70th anniversary this year, UNPAR continues to embrace its vision of becoming an academic community that is humanum, driven by love and truth, and embracing unity in diversity. This core value align deeply with the European Union's own commitment to peace, solidarity, and cooperation. We believe that education is a bridge, one that spans borders, cultures, and generations. Through this partnership with the EU, we are strengthening that bridge, and we look forward with great anticipation to your guest lecture, which promises to challenge and inspire us. In today's world, which is described as a complex and interconnected tapestry of diverse cultures, society, and systems, marked by both progress and challenges, we become more convinced that autonomy is important, but collaboration is still a must. On behalf of the entire Universitas Katolik Parahyangan academic community, allow me to extend our warmest welcome We look forward to meaningful discussion, fruitful collaboration, and lasting friendship. Thank you and welcome to UNPAR.
Thank you, Professor Tribasuki Yuwono, for your inspiring words and vision for continued collaboration between UNPAR and the European Union. Next, it's a great privilege to invite His Excellency Denis Chaibi, the Ambassador for Indonesia and Brunei Darussalam, to come to the stage and share your remarks with us.
Students, dear Rector Yuwono, such a pleasure to be in Bandung. Initially, my plan was to go to the outlets and have a bit of coffee, and then Stefan said, no, you have to work. So I said, okay, let's try to do something. So I bought a nice batik shirt for today, very different from the suit. And I decided that we would do something that is actually very important for Europe. In Europe, we have obviously lots of students, slightly more than Indonesia, but we are an aging population. And we have old world challenges. And the only way we can tackle challenges is to learn from people who have new world challenges, who are full of dynamism, full of life, a bit younger, a bit more optimistic, people with more energy than what we have. And so in this framework, what we want to do is to really develop our university cooperation. We want to look for new ideas, new energy, as I said. So we have a program that is called Erasmus+. And so with Erasmus+, we foster the cooperation between universities. And it's great that 2 out of 3 times UNPAR was selected. It's really a testimony to the value of this university. But also students individually can come to Europe. And I know that you have lots of possibilities starting here, and here is certainly the most direct route to university. But it's also good when you do your universities in Indonesia that you can do an exchange, or you can do a master and then come back, or you can do 1 year of your PhD, and then you have the choice. The natural choice for you are countries that are close, Japan, China, Australia, but Europe is much better. Europe is much better. It's further, but that's good. Your parents will not call you at any time of the day to ask you how you are. There's time difference. You say, oh, I'm busy at the moment. So, you know, it's safer to go to Europe than to go close to home. But more seriously, we are cheaper. We are cheaper than most of the other countries. But at the same time, you get free health coverage, and you can travel all around Europe. Once you have the Schengen visa, you can travel all around Europe. And even within one program, you can do 2 universities. You can do an exchange. So we are very modular. And you can combine your universities with the discovery of the best cities in the world. Sorry to be proud, but all cities are very nice. Bandung is called the Paris of Java, so go to Paris to compare. And what we offer is really a kind of window into history, into culture. And what we get from you is a new look, is a new exchange. It's very strong bonds that you will keep for life with the friends you will have made in Europe. And hopefully your friends in Europe will come. We are also trying to have many more students from Europe to come here, because there's a lot to learn, as I said, from tropical medicine to engineering to different areas. So we are really here to foster this cooperation. And after this, I will do a lecture, but the lecture is really interactive. As soon as I've done through a few slides, I hope you will be able to ask lots of questions and interact. We are in a world that is changing fast, and I think that Indonesia and the EU can learn so much from each other. So I'm really, really looking forward to the discussion later. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. But we kindly ask you to remain on the stage as we're going to proceed to the next agenda, which is the signing of the MOU. Therefore, I kindly ask Professor Insinyur Tribasuki Yuwono, our rector, also to come to the stage for the next agenda, the signing Memorandum of Understanding between UNPAR and the European Union. So actually we have a special pen here, Pak Rector, from Mr. Ambassador, a special pen from EU that we have to use this pen. Yes, UNPAR has to use the pen from the EU. Yes, okay. Yes, but then, yeah, okay. So we're going to do this signing MOU, which signifies a formal commitment to work together in advancing academic exchange, research and global cooperation. And this is marking the beginning of a deeper and more fruitful partnership between UNPAR and EU. We will have a little bit photo session, yes, and show it to the camera in hoping that it's not only symbolize a formal commitment, but also serve as a foundation. Applause for this cooperation. Hopefully it will open door for more opportunities. Okay, that's all? Okay, thank you very much. And we will also have prepared the token of appreciation between the university, but do you mind to move slightly to the side of the table? From UNPAR, and also we have from European Union. This is from UNPAR first. Yes, show it to the camera in 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. Okay, and then shall we have another one from European Union, brought by Pak Stephen, I believe. This is another one from European Union. We really anticipate a collaborative. Yes. We also would like to invite our vice rectors to come to the stage to have a photo session for this milestone. Yes, probably in front of the table, it's better. We do it both sides, so the photographer may come to the stage later on, together with the audience. Yes. Pak Stephen is there? Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Amazing. It's good? Okay, let's do it both ways. Yeah, so you need to turn around so that we can take a picture with the whole audience here. Yes, please. Yes, is it possible for the audience to stand up? And move it a little bit to the middle if it's possible. To this side. So we can have a picture all together with His Excellency. Are we okay like this? Yes? Okay. I also want to be in the picture. Where am I? Okay. Okay, to the middle, to the middle. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna count it. That side, it's still that part? Yeah? Everybody in it? Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Suddenly it's quiet. Okay. Another one? Another pose, maybe? Pak Stephen, you have suggestion for pose? No? Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Amazing. Thank you very much. Now that the signing has concluded and we have captured this moment, thank you everyone for being part of this moment. Next we will have a little bit of transition for the press briefing for the ambassador. So we will move to the holding room again for the press briefing, for the press conference for the ambassador, and we will have a little break, ladies and gentlemen. But trust me, I may leaving you for a while, but we have two amazing students who will make this session even more interesting. Yes. And after that, we'll be right back with the special lecture by His Excellency Denis Chaibi. Okay, please welcome our amazing UNPAR delegation.
this side.
Very much, Rifki and Cynthia. I hope everyone enjoyed the session, and congratulations to those who received the gift. So we will already in the next agenda of our today's events, which is the special guest lecture from His Excellency Denis Chaibi, the ambassador, which then will be moderated by our Secretary of the University, Mbak Sylvia Yasid, PhD. So today's lecture is titled Strategic Autonomy in an Era of Trade Wars, the EU's Role in a Shifting Global Order. The topic is incredibly timely as global dynamics, particularly the trade wars part, as we are now reshaping how regions like the EU engage in this global economy. And we are eager to hear insights from the ambassador on how the EU is going to navigating these challenges while also playing a crucial role in shaping the future of global cooperation. Please welcome His Excellency Ambassador Denis Chaibi, and also our moderator. The lecture will be then followed by Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Icha. Would you like to start immediately? Okay, so I'll be downstairs then.
So, I'm back already. Strategic autonomy in an era of trade wars, the EU's role in a shifting global order. Let me start with what do we understand with this title? Shifting global order. Historians are still debating when really the third wave of globalization started. There have been different waves of globalization in our history, but let's say the third wave started perhaps with the Uruguay round, the WTO, which opened a path to very reduced tariffs. The tariffs had been very high since the Smooth Ole Act taken by the United States in the 30s, and basically at that time the tariffs shot up, and it took tremendous amount of time, almost 50 years, to go back to the level where they were. And then we had the breakthrough with, it was called at the time GATT negotiations, that significantly lowered many tariffs in the, let's say, industrialized world. So from that era, from let's say 95 till now, what we've seen is a huge expansion, massive expansion of trade. And this trade has allowed for several things. First of all, it has taken out more than 1 billion people out of poverty. And with 2 countries that are the most heavily populated, China and India, having the benefits of trade and the opening of trade, and becoming very strong exporters. So China and India have done well, but as has Indonesia. Indonesia over the last 25 years has grown at, on an average, more than 5% growth. It's very stable and it's among the top of the world. So trade has opened an era of economic growth that had not been met in a long time at the global level. Obviously in each region it is different, but at the global level we had an incredible economic growth over the last 25 years. But at the same time, there have been a few phenomena that have had an impact on certain countries. And one of the impact is the rise of China. And because the US is the main superpower in the world, the main superpower sees the rise of a country to a level that could be a threat to the sole superpower as something that it has to react to. So that is the point of view of the United States. And then the other thing is that domestically, in many democracies from the Western world, lots of people have been upset by the inequalities generated by this fantastic economic growth. This fantastic economic growth has not benefited every citizen in the Western world in the same fashion. It has not benefited every citizen in the same fashion all around the world, but in industrialized country, let's say, the instrumentalization of that resentment for inequality has been much stronger. So, this is the very heavy context of this first slide and of the title. But the key of this lecture is to see how the EU is adapting. So we can go to the next slide. And what we see is, in the next slides, is that we have challenges that are also opportunities, to quote a famous Chinese say. Challenges are opportunities. So the first one is that we have less multilateralism and rule-based order. For us in Europe, it is a very, very strong concern because we feel that Russia's invasion of Ukraine is against the rules that allow countries to live together peacefully. So that is the first challenge, and it's a very, very present challenge for us. We feel that is existential. We feel that without rules, Russia will soon be in a member states of the European Union. So we hear that, we have to accept the situation and things will stop as they are now, but we don't believe it. And we don't believe it because we've seen over the last 15 years how this has evolved. The second big challenge for us is trade. We have worked very much for trade openness. We have been relentless in the World Trade Organization to make sure that the rules are clearer and that everyone benefits from them. So for us, less trade openness is a very difficult topic. Then in climate change, we are a group of nations that have taken the most drastic measures. We want to stop combustion engine to be sold in Europe by 2035. So in 10 years' time, combustion engine would not be sold anymore in the EU. Let's see if we manage to keep that, because it's a very big challenge. But this is the kind of measure we have taken. And then finally, something that is very important for university students is the importance of artificial intelligence and digitalization. It is utmost important for all students to be at the top of this, because this is going to be a very big dividing line between people in the future. So let me start to dig a bit with the first challenge, multilateralism. In the EU is a peace project. The EU is a peace project. Since the formation of the EU, the members who are in the EU have not waged war against each other. It seems natural to you, and perhaps it's a bit odd that I mention this as a big achievement, but in the history of Europe, over the last 1,000 years, this has never happened. We have never, ever had 60 years with nobody among 27 nations in the EU not waging war against another. This has never happened. It's the first time that nobody of the 27 is at war with another country. So it is a peace project. And since we started from peace and we benefited from the US umbrella of security, we focused on what unite people and nations. So we focused on trade, we focused on research, on university cooperation. We focused on all that. But now we realize that to preserve peace in Europe, we have to take a more defensive action. We have to invest in defense, in weapons, otherwise we won't be at peace. We will be attacked. So it's a peace project, but it has evolved. Indonesia is in the ring of fire because it has lots of volcanoes, lots of threats, natural disasters. In Europe, we are also in a kind of ring of fire, but very different, because we are at peace among ourselves, but all around us, there's less wealth, there's more demographic energy, there's difficult history, there's different models of governance. So our ring of fire is the fact that we have peace inside, but we have fire all around us, and we have to deal with that. So what we want to do as Europe, when we are dealing with less multilateralism, is to look in the world with the big actors who are still in favor of a rule-based order. You know, you can have a vision that is alternative, that says, well, the UN is not worth defending. The United Nations is totally biased. It's a totally Western organization, and we don't want rules. We want a new regime according to what we see fit. What we hear Indonesia saying is that the system, the international system, the United Nations and others, the World Bank, IMF, they are not perfect. They are a bit biased in favor of the West, but we still believe in rules, and what we need is to work together to reshape this, to rebalance a bit the international system, but keeping the fundamentals of rules. And this, for us, it's a very good partnership. It's a very good conversation. For example, for us, it's good that Indonesia wants to be a member of the OECD, as at the same time, Indonesia is free to pursue more cooperation with BRICS. What we want is to have partners with whom we can work to make the international system more responsive to the challenges. So that is for the first challenge, multilateralism. Then let me come to the second big challenge, which is the core piece of this lecture, trade. If I can have the next slide. Trade is very important for Europe. As I said, we invested in trade because we felt that it was a vehicle for peace, making more people wealthier and with more links between the nations that are trading. And to do that, our objective was to build trust. So we try to be reliable, predictable, open, and fair. And it's not easy, because it's easier to always kind of go for your own industry or to trade less and make sure you have control. But for us, trade is very important. For every nation which is part of the EU, the trade ratio to GDP is above 80 or 90%, which means that most of the money that we make as Europeans come from trading, from importing and from exporting and finding value in between. So that's why we have 76 trade agreements, 76. And we keep negotiating. So we recently concluded Mercosur, Mexico, Switzerland, and in Southeast Asia we are negotiating with Indonesia, obviously, but Thailand, Philippines, and we are also discussing with Malaysia. So for us, trade is both a mean to acquire more trust, acquire more peace, but it's also an end, in the sense that our economic welfare is based on trade. We can go to the next slide, which shows how important trade is for the EU. We are 1/6 of the world economy, with a much smaller population than that. And everyone knows that China is a big trader. But we are the world's largest trading blocs when you take goods and services together. So it's not the US or it's not China. When you take services and good, and you take both imports and exports, the EU is the largest trading bloc. China is the largest good exporter, and US is the largest services exporter. But when you put two together, the EU is the most important. And above all, we invest. We have massive investments in the United States, massive. We have massive investments in China. So we invest all around the world. And in terms of markets, group of people buying, well, you know, obviously China is a very big group, but it's not an open market. It's not open to everyone and for all products. India is a very large market, but it's not as open, and it's a poorer market. And the market that has been the richest and the most open, the USA, is changing fast. It has decided to go against what it has done for the last 50 years. So in terms of market, we remain, or we are becoming, the most attractive market in the world because of our size and because of our openness. So how this trade between EU and Indonesia developed, that is in the next slide. And it is a trade that is rather rewarding. You will see the trend. Overall, it's a positive trend, except when there's COVID. When there's COVID, you can see that it dipped, but it came back. But what is important is that it's a trade that, in terms of goods, gives 7 billion euro surplus to Indonesia. So Indonesia's trade surpluses, the biggest is with the States. The biggest trade surplus of Indonesia, so the net difference between the import and exports, is with the USA. But something tells me that it will no longer be the biggest one next year. But at the moment it is the biggest. The second biggest is India. Indonesia sells a lot of palm oil and coal to India. So the second largest surplus is India. But as you've seen, President Prabowo went to India as an official visit, guest of honor. But India asked for the Indonesian economy to be more open to India product. So there again, the trade surplus is likely to evolve. So we are the third largest one, and perhaps the most predictable of the three. If we look at figures in the next slide, you will have few figures, but basically we are Indonesia's fifth largest trading partner, but Indonesia is only the 33rd largest trade partner. So even though Indonesia is having a surplus of 7 billion in terms of goods, it can do much better because it's only the 33rd partner of the EU. And why it can be better, if we go to the next slide, it's because our trade is complementary. What we are producing in Europe doesn't compete with the local production of Indonesia. If we look at the categories, so if we go to the next slide, our trade is complementary. So, and we go to the next slide, let's see what the EU exports to Indonesia. What we export is basically a lot of machinery, appliances, transport equipment, optical. These machines are used to make things. So they are being used by Indonesian companies to produce and bring added value. So they're an instrument in the economic growth of Indonesia. And then if we look at what Indonesia exports to the EU, in the next slide, what we see in the next slide is that Indonesia exports animal vegetable fats and oil. So basically this is palm oil. So whatever you read in the papers, the EU is a huge consumer of palm oil. We use it not only for confectionery, chocolate, food products, cooking, but we use it a lot in the cosmetics. Nice hair, nice lipstick, nice everything that is beauty products as palm oil. It's a fantastic oil for beauty products. So in Europe we are very vain, so we use a lot of cosmetic products, so we use a lot of palm oil. We use a lot of mineral products for the steel. We use a lot of textile and footwear. One of the biggest European company, and that's the irony, is Nike. Nike is obviously an American company, but they export so much footwear to Europe that it's considered as a European producer because of the volume they export to Europe. So this is what Indonesia exports to Europe. And in Europe, no, we are not making palm oil, and we cannot make the Pegasus Nike as well as Indonesia. So our economy are complementary. And next slide, our trade is complementary. European machines provide essential inputs for Indonesia's production processes, and it allows Indonesia to be a much bigger exporter and have a much better export capacity. Where we have a surplus is in services. If you look at the next slide, you will see that on services, European exports more to Indonesia than what Indonesia exports to Europe. And what is the nature of our exports? Well, the next slides will show that there's a lot of transport. So basically, this again is a tool for economic growth in Indonesia, because transport is about air travel and freight cargo. So it is the things that bring tourists here, that bring freight, that bring cargo. And then we have telecommunications and businesses services, all of them which are economic enablers. So this is the structure of our trade. But there's a problem with that structure, and we come to the next slide. We are exporting, so Indonesia is exporting palm oil, footwear, textile, and we are exporting machinery. But what we could do to develop our trade significantly is to start working together much more on global value chain, which means that the product come in from somewhere else, it come in Indonesia, gets more added value in Indonesia, and then goes to another country, perhaps in the ASEAN, and then is exported to the EU. So why this kind of global value chain? Why is it interesting? I'll take an example that I think you are familiar with if you've read the news papers recently, or if you looked at your phone. It's Apple's iPhone 16. Apple iPhone 16. The Apple iPhone 16 could not be sold in Indonesia because it didn't have the local content requirement. There was not enough local content. So the Indonesian government said, we want to build the Apple iPhone 16 with a lot of elements that are found in Indonesia. And Apple said no. The government said, then you cannot sell the iPhone. So Indonesia said, okay, I'll do a marketing academy for $100 million. And the government said, no, we want you to build a factory. So they said, okay, we're going to build a factory of AirTag close to Singapore. And then the government said, no, that's just one element, a bit of metal and a magnet. That's not industrial. We want a lot of local content requirement. What happened? Will there be a big Apple factory of iPhones in Indonesia? No. There will be no Apple factory, because nowhere in the world Apple has one factory with all the products. Nowhere in the world. Even in China, there are products coming from Vietnam, or even in Vietnam, there are products coming from China. And now, because of the policies of President Trump, Apple going to move the factories in India, but it will be assembly. They will be assembling elements that come from around the world. And why? Why is it like that? Because every element that is made in a part of the world is made at a cost that is one of the best, because it has scale. It does, instead of doing 5 million of this, for example, coil, if you open your iPhone, or if you're like me, you're not very careful and it breaks and you need to replace the glass, then when you open, you see the coil. Okay, this coil, if you make 5 million units, perhaps it will cost 20,000 rupees. But if you make 50 million of this, the cost will be lower. And companies like Apple or the big, that's what they do. They do global value chain. And European companies, they invest in global value chain because it brings concentration, scale, reduced cost, but also when you have such a scale, you can innovate, you can test the technology, because the return on investment of the technology is much bigger because of the scale. So you get more competitive. The countries that are totally integrated in global value chain, they get this new technology, which brings them to be more competitive, and therefore one brings another. More competitive population brings more technology, which in turn brings more competitiveness. So what the EU is interested to do with Indonesia is work together on global value chains. And it requires a lot. For example, in Vietnam there are 18 Apple factories. Not one that makes the whole phone, as I said. They are making little parts. But you know, all these 18 factories are fed with renewable energy. And why are they fed with renewable energy? Not because Apple wants to save the world, absolutely. No, because Apple, when they plan their factory, they want to make sure that the cost of the energy is the same. If they go for coal or for diesel, the price will go up and down according to the global cost. If they go for renewable energy, solar panels, wind, they know for the next 10 years the stable price. And that's tremendous when preparing the profitability of the company. So Vietnam has invested in more renewable energies for that. And Vietnam is investing in global value change. So this is basically the goal. We can go to the next slide. The goal is for EU and Indonesia to work together to make together more competitive product and diversifying the export base. Once you're in global value chain, you don't export to just 2 or 3 countries that are very interested in your product. You are exporting to the world. Instead of 20 countries, you're expanding to 80 countries. So it's a very, very different approach. So what we want is work with Indonesia on this diversification and competitiveness agenda, not because, you know, we just want to help Indonesia. It's because it's a win-win situation. We win a lot and Indonesia wins a lot. This is what we want, and we feel, on the next slide, that Indonesia is a reliable partner. So we, as EU, we are looking for reliable partners. And obviously for us, trustworthy, fair business, adherence to rule-based order, and transparent is something that we like. We try to practice. We are not perfect. We try to practice, and we feel that Indonesia would practice that too with a strong relation. So we believe in this, and we believe in this because figures are very telling. Let's look at the next slide. So Indonesia is the largest economy in ASEAN. So basically Indonesia alone is 40% of the ASEAN. You know, if we would compare this to the EU, we would say Germany is the equivalent of France and Poland and Netherlands together. That's what Indonesia is in the ASEAN. It is 40%, 36% in economy, 40% in people. So you are massive, but we trade more with Thailand, with Singapore, with Vietnam, with Malaysia. So we trade more with much smaller countries and much smaller economy than yours. And that's not normal. That shows the vast untapped potential. So global value chain, complementary economies, and huge potential. This is why we are negotiated a comprehensive economic partnership agreement called CEPA. So that's the next slide. And we've been discussing this since 2016. So it's called CEPA, but it's not CEPAT. It's very slow. It's very slow because we are asking big things from Indonesia. We are asking to look at global value chain rather than focus vertical export. So our leaders have spoken before President Widodo, and we are looking very much forward to the next conversation with President Prabowo. So this is the main things that we have on the agenda between EU and Indonesia, but we are doing also other things, and that's the next slide. We're doing a lot of cooperation. University is one form of cooperation. We have dialogues, we have political dialogue, security dialogue, environment dialogue, human rights dialogue, and we are very eager to get more information and conversation from Indonesia during specific events such as Indonesia chairmanship of the G20 and Indonesia chairmanship of the ASEAN. And I will finish with education, since we are in the university UNPAR. That's the next slide. As I said, Indonesia 11 million students, EU a bit more, but in both cases, universities are looking for skilled students, but in an inclusive environment. And really the tolerance that I see everywhere in Indonesia is something that I don't see that much, around the world. Indonesia is unique. The openness you have and the tolerance. We have this in our constitutions in Europe, but I don't think we practice it as well as you do. And I think universities are the best place to practice tolerance. So there I see a lot of things for Europeans to learn. As it is often mentioned, we have a lot to do together on sustainability, and we are trying to do a program which is 1,000 green engineers, so basically a database where you can find the best universities and best degrees to study sustainability-related studies. So for example, 2 weeks ago, I opened the Swedish University Education Fair. And Sweden is at really the vanguard of sustainability studies. And until a few years ago, they had 500 students coming on this kind of fair. And now there were 2,000, times 4. So we are very, very happy that lots of Indonesian students are looking for sustainability studies in Europe. And really, European students can gain so much from sustainability studies here. The forest is here, the biodiversity is here, the mangroves are here, the lung of the earth are here. So for European students to come here and learn in Indonesia is a fantastic opportunity. So we are really committed to this university cooperation education, and we are really committed in doing more with Indonesia. So that concludes the first part of the lecture, but then we can now go for questions and answer. Terima kasih.
Shall we have a seat? Okay. We have the drink there. Okay, first thank you for all of you who are staying for the question and answer. I know it's lunchtime. And 1 o'clock is our next class session. So thank you, appreciation to all of you who stay, and thank you for those who have come earlier. So we actually mined some questions earlier, and we have 107 questions on the list. But shall we give opportunity to the audience first? Anyone want to ask urgent questions? I see one here. Do you want to take one by one, or 2 or 3 at one time? So the gentleman with the glasses here, please state your name, your campus or your prodi, and then 2 more. The lady here. Anyone from this side? One more question. Yes, at the top, the lady with the hijab. Okay. Yes. You can start, sir.
Okay,
yeah.
Start. Okay. Good morning, HE Denis Chaibi. My name is Jonathan Stephen Komarudin from Universitas Katolik Parahyangan, Faculty Accounting. I want to ask a question. So previously it was stated that European Union is the 5th largest trading partner for Indonesia, but Indonesia is only the 33rd largest trading partner for European Union. What reason makes Indonesia only the 33rd largest trading partner for European Union, and what countries are in the top 5 largest trading partner for European Union? Also, what reason makes other Asian countries or Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Singapore, and Malaysia are larger trading partner for European Union, even though Indonesia has a way higher GDP?
Okay, Jonathan, right? Yes, so basically, why are we there? Not higher. Okay. The next one?
Good afternoon, honorable guests, moderator, and audience. My name is Eileen Kalisha, you can call me Eileen, from IR Batch 24, and I would like to ask a question. In the process of the EU's adaptation to the shifting global order, would it greatly affect the amount of investments they give to the US and China in an effort for autonomy or in an effort to prioritize untapped nations like Indonesia? Because if I recall correctly, in the field of multilateralism, it seemed to me that there are changing prioritization due to major powers in the world not being as reliable. So for trade, would the same happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, isn't it? Yes, thank you, Eileen. One more.
Thank you for your attention, everyone. In here, I want to ask a question about what you're saying, that Indonesia is one of the biggest import of palm oil. But I heard that you want to ban the import of palm oil because of the environmental issue that I hear recently, and how is that will has an effect between a global trade with EU and Indonesia. Thank you for your attention.
May I have your name and your...
Sabrina Salsabila from Faculty of Law.
Faculty of Law, yeah. Thank you. Denis, would you like...
Hello, thank you. So I think next time we do this during lunchtime, we have to plan it during Ramadan, and we are on the same plane, so it will be easier. But okay, I'll try to be brief so that your stomach is not rolling too much. Why are we trading more with Vietnam, Singapore, Malaysia? With Vietnam and Singapore, we have a free trade agreement. We have a free trade agreement, and it's not only that tariffs line, it's how much percentage of tax you pay when each product come in the country. It's not only that the tariffs are lower line by line, it's the fact that the agreement is an international treaty, so it's a legal agreement, and it gives reassurances to the investors, to European investors in Singapore, in Vietnam, and to Vietnam or Singaporean investors in Europe, because there's a clearer legal context in which our trade takes place. So the free trade agreement brings investment, foreign direct investment from Europe, and hopefully the other way around. And this, because the people have invested in the production, this increased the trade, because they're gonna, buy the trade that comes from their investment. So this is the main reason why other countries in the ASEAN trade more with Europe. Malaysia doesn't have a free trade agreement, but has made a legal context for foreign direct investment with Europe that is clearer in terms of legal context, and also the kind of product they have exported have been in that sense. So this is there are many other reasons, but I'm trying to focus on the big poster. Second thing, in a polarized world, will the EU move its investments from China to Indonesia? It is very, very difficult to say at this stage exactly what will happen. Obviously, for Europe, if it's impossible to export from China to the US, it is a factor that in all objectiveness should reduce the investments of Europe. But the situation can also change. Perhaps China has other markets and other logistical chains from which European investments in China can export to other countries. That could also be a possibility. So I don't want to discuss, and I think that it will be very difficult for each type of industry and even each company. What I can tell you is that on the one hand, if you see the rest of the world's reaction to the US threats of tariffs, or in the case of China, these are not threats, the tariffs have been imposed. and they have imposed at a magnitude 100% more combined that basically prevents, even if you are hyper competitive, you cannot export a Chinese product to the US now, unless it's again Apple, because the phones have been exempted, the car components have been exempted, so the things that are crucial for the American companies have been exempted, but all the other products are. On the one hand, the rest of the world has not retaliated. So Indonesia has not retaliated, India has not retaliated, Brazil has not retaliated. They are all making individual deals with the US. So there's no huge contagion so far, but China has retaliated, and I really doubt that China will back down first. And European Union is ready to retaliate. So, you know, if you look at the start of my presentation, you have three behemoths of international trade, three actors that are much, much larger in terms of trading: China, US, and EU. So if those three are engaged in retaliation and high tariffs, there are consequences for the rest of the world, because these are the three biggest trading. So I cannot say exactly which direction what will go and where it will go, but having worked a lot in trade for the last 30 years, I can tell you that the world of tomorrow will be very different from the world of yesterday in terms of trade landscape, and that the price of partnership, of free trade agreement, will be now much more precious than before, much more precious. So that's all I can say on that. Now on palm oil, I have to be very clear. The EU has not banned the import of palm oil from Indonesia or from any country. Palm oil can come to the EU, and over the last few years, except with COVID, palm oil has been exported at the same level of quantities as before for most of the categories of product. Now, what has happened is that biofuels, which is a very specific category of derivative of palm oil, so biofuel from palm oil, to be accounted for in Europe, has to go through such a process that it's not very interesting. It's not realistic to export palm oil as a biofuel to the EU. The competition of other products and the fact that it has to be beneficial for the environment, and it is. So yeah, biofuels exports to the EU from Indonesia have gone down. The rest of palm oil, so oil, cooking oil, but above all, component for confectionery and for the beauty products, it is staying at the same level or increasing. So what we have is we have a EU deforestation regulation that asks anyone, not just Indonesia, every country in the world, including the EU, for certain commodities, not only palm oil, but timber, cocoa, and others, coffee, so that these commodities have to come from a place where the small agricultures has a title, that it's a legal exploitation, so it has to be legal, and it has to be traceable, so that it doesn't come from an area that has been deforested after 2020. After 2020, in Indonesia, deforestation virtually stopped or has been sharply reduced since 2017-18. So what the EU says is for any deforestation after 2020, you have to show that the product doesn't come from there. The problem is that here you have hundreds of thousands of small farmers who are farming palm oil or cocoa or coffee without a deed, without a title. So they don't have the piece of document that is officially recognized. They can do it, they can cultivate, but they don't show the piece of property of land that is necessary. And you know, it is not good for the smallholder to not have this, because if you have a deed, then you can go to your bank and you can have a mortgage and you can get money to invest. The productivity of the smallholders for palm oil is much lower than the big companies. And that's not normal, because big companies, it's not, you know, people cultivating their own land, they should have a lower productivity. But no, they have more fertilizers, they have more insecticides, they have more products that brings a bigger yield. So what we want to do as EU is work with the government and with the industry to have programs that show that with the title deed and the geolocation, you can produce more palm oil, but from areas that have not been deforested. So what we want is to increase the productivity per square kilometer so that there's no need to deforest more. That is the objective.
Okay, thank you. Do we have more questions? There are some questions about reshoring, friendshoring, and also sustainability in the context of trade. So is there Jordan Faris Yudhistira? Is he still here? Or Albertus Rama? Oh,
they went for lunch.
Well, actually, I can tell the question. So with the strengthening of reshoring and friendshoring, how will EU keep the commitment, sustain the commitment to trade and also to sectors which are important like green technology and semiconductor? That's one question. And also the next one is, how does the EU perspective concerns raised by Indonesia, the EUDR, the issue of EUDR might function as a non-tariff barrier rather than a genuine sustainability measure? And this one is expected to be answered because it's also what he's going to research on, he said here.
Thank you. So yes, in a world where countries, or at least some countries, become less predictable and less reliable, how can we be sure that the EU will remain predictable and reliable? Well, it's because we are not a country. The EU is not a country. The EU is an association of sovereign nations. And if the sovereign nations stay together, it's only through rules. It's not because the bigger member states say to the other, you have to stay in the EU. You know, Belgium is not member of the EU because France tells Belgium you have to be in the EU like this, you are our ally. No, that's not how it works. How it works, we have rules that bind the 27 together, and it's only through rules, and rules are predictable, are transparent. People don't like rules because they prevent us from doing what we want to do when we want to do. Well, when we don't do what we want to do when we want to do, we start to be more reliable and we start to be more predictable because we stick by rules. That's how the EU works. We work together because we adopt rules together. And most of the rules, for the people who really study the EU in depth, most of the rules favor the small ones because there are many more small ones than big ones. But the big ones accept because they benefit from the critical mass. So this is the kind of logic, and this kind of logic, when you apply to the world, when you apply this to the external relations of the EU, it makes us quite predictable, quite reliable, quite transparent, but then people find us, when we do rules on deforestation, then they find us too much rules, too many rules, too predictable, and then they accuse us of protectionism. So, are we protectionist with the EU deforestation regulation? So this is an argument I hear often, and I must say I'm a bit puzzled. The first thing, and I mentioned it, These rules for the deforestation apply to everyone in the world, including the EU member states. Including the EU member states. Okay, we don't produce palm oil, but we produce timber. So we apply the rules for the commodities, but we are looking at the commodities that have caused deforestation. And a lot of criticism is that, yeah, you don't have forest anymore in Europe, so that's why you do EU deforestation regulation. It's not true. We have massive forests. We have massive forests in Finland, in Sweden, in many countries we have forest. But it's true, there are exploitation forests, and they've not been deforested since 2020. But we're looking at an issue that is global. So people do what they want. You know, if people want to deforest, we don't like it, but it's not that we're going to attack or put 100% tariffs. What we do, and that's from our consumers, we say we don't want to buy products that come from deforestation. If all consumers make that choice, it's their choice, and they've put that into a norm. Now, as I said, the aim is not at all to prevent palm oil from coming. We need palm oil. The EU, which are the big European companies that you know, Ferrero Rocher, the guys who make all these little chocolate, Unilever, all the shampoo, all the lipstick, L'Oreal, these are the brands you know. For these brands, if they don't have palm oil or if the palm oil is very expensive, then they lose competitiveness and they lose market share to Chinese cosmetics or American products. So it is in our interest to import palm oil. We want to import palm oil, but we just want to make sure that it doesn't come from deforested areas. We have put some norms, but it's not protectionist, because what are the competitors for palm oil for our cosmetic industry? We have none. We are not producing anything in Europe that can replace palm oil in the cosmetic. So there's no protection. We are not protecting. People say, oh, you are protecting rapeseed oil, and you have endangered your marshes to cultivate that. The quantities, you know, rapeseed oil production in Europe compared to palm oil imports, it's very small. There's no protection of that. And most of the rapeseed oil that is produced in Europe is exported out of Europe to the countries next. It's mainly in Bulgaria, Romania, and they are exported in the countries next. So on this argument that is protectionist, I simply don't see a proper scientific reasoning that backs that proposition.
Okay, thank you very much, His Excellency. One more session. Okay, we are open for 2 or 3 questions for the last session. We have the gentleman in the middle, the lady with the black hijab, and again the gentleman. Oh, we have one there. You can go and you can also go. So we have 4. Where do we start?
Thank you, Your Excellencies. First of all, I am Ralfano Farenchandra. I'm from International Relations, batch 2024. And I would like to express my gratitude for you to come here. So the question is, well, as an avid reader of history, this antics about America implementing tariffs is not the first time. Maybe in the 1930s, when America implemented the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, and it caused a Great Depression. But when America in the 1930s implemented the tariff, there is no rising power like we know right now, the Chinese. But if the shifting of the global order is really happening and China came to power, will the European Union embrace the change, or the European Union will protect the Western Hemisphere, especially American hegemonic power? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the second question.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lika Fatrani, and I am from the Faculty of Law, batch 2024. My question is honestly a bit similar to the previous one. Talking about the recent issues in the trade world, the Trump's tariffs, it significantly affected many nations in the world. And I am curious, how does the recent US tariffs under President Trump specifically affect the trade dynamics between the European Union and Indonesia, and how we adapt to that issue from the perspective of from policy or regulations making? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a big question, like, how does it affect us? What should we do? Yeah, thank you. We go to the middle. Cynthia. Thank you, Cynthia.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity, Your Excellency. So my question is, my name is Raka from International Relations, batch 22. As the US continues their path of protectionism while the world grows ever more interconnected, could Europe and the European Union become the leading face of global partnership and cooperation, such as, let's say, the Paris Agreement? And how do you think should the European Union capitalize on its partner countries who have been very tariffed at a high percentage, such as China, Vietnam, and obviously Indonesia? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question. I think it's that way. Sorry.
Thank you for the opportunities. Hello, my name is Muhammad Firdaus from International Relations Batch 23. So the question is, in order to really facing the problems within the trade wars between China and the US, we need to talk about the communication system, or maybe strategic communication to facing the the problems that emerge because of trade wars. Maybe what is the European Union strategic communication to really facing the problem in the level of domestic, or maybe in the level of international? Okay, maybe that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's interesting. The communication, like, what do you want to change strategy of communication, like with the changing situation? It affect the strategy that you're using to communicate. Thank you. Yeah.
Easy question. But the first person expressed gratitude from the outset. I'd like to, before I forget, express my gratitude. You have not eaten and you are asking difficult questions. That's a double effort. No, but thank you very much for coming here and listening to the EU. We need to communicate better, and I'll come to that. But the fact that you accept and you're interested is very heartwarming for us. So let's start with the American tariffs and if the EU will embrace China. In 2003, the EU wrote a love letter to China, but a love letter in institutional jargon, we call it communication, official EU communication. So the EU communication on China in 2003, you can find it on the internet. It's really saying China is going to have an incredible trajectory, it's going to achieve great things, and it's all fantastic. And China responded, the EU is the best thing that we have ever invented, new model of governance, the future of the world, and multilateralism. So there was a lot of love in 2003. And what happened? What happened? Several things happened, but the way the EU implemented the trade rules was quite different the way China implemented the trade rules. The trade rules were supposed to be the same, the WTO. But they were implemented very, very differently. That is one fundamental thing. And then the other thing is that the EU, when it penned its love letter to China in 2003, thought that the governance of China would look more and more like the governance in the European Union in terms of values, of expression, of civil society. And I think that over the last 10 years, the trajectories have diverged a bit. So the rules have not been interpreted in the same way, and internally the governance has been different, and different evolution. And that is why it's difficult for the EU to fully and immediately embrace China, and why it is difficult for China to fully embrace the EU the way the EU would like to be embraced. Anything, you know, when you are looking at relations between US-EU or US-China or EU-China, it's not a matter of 2 years, 5 years. You know, these are tectonic plates that move. So now you have the impression that there's a sudden massive confrontation between China and the US, 2025. You know, Barack Obama called the pivot of defense in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, or 2013. So more than 10 years ago, US said to the world, our biggest threat is China, and we're going to put all the troops that are in the EU in front of China. That was said 11 years ago. And now when President Trump comes say, no, I don't want American troops or NATO in Europe, we're like, oh, this is a shock. President Obama said the pivot more than 11 years ago. So what I'm saying is that you cannot now say that the EU will embrace China or China will embrace EU next year because of the tariffs. What you have to do is, what are the long-term movement? And I think that the US unease with being the most powerful, but also seeing the rising of another superpower, this is something to stay. Even if President Trump loses the midterm elections and then the elections, the kind of distrust for the global role of the US within the US is something fundamental, as now will be fundamental for Europe to spend more on their own defense and to have a more robust approach on military matters. So these are the fundamental things. If in that space China and EU can get closer because they trade more, I mean, they're trading already a lot, but they have more interconnected investments, then perhaps that's a possibility. But there are so many other elements. At the moment, the EU companies still have, I don't know the magnitude, but it's minimum 30 or 40 times more investment in the US than they have in China. And they trade 30 or 40, no, trade is less. But investment, they have 30 or 40 times more in the US than in China. So before this can be rebalanced, we are talking about a decade, not a few months. So let's see how it will pan out. Second question. Does the US tariffs change the dynamic between the EU and Indonesia? Well, you know, before even the tariffs were imposed, as soon as President Trump got elected, the EU went straight to Brazil and concluded the Mercosur negotiations that had been ongoing for more than 20 years. And then we had negotiations with Switzerland that had been ongoing for 10 years. And you're going to laugh saying, oh, Switzerland, small country. Switzerland is our second commercial partner. So they had been reluctant as well. But then suddenly when President Trump was elected, they were ready to connect with the EU. Mexico, we had negotiations for 10 years, concluded like this. Now we were discussing Philippines and Thailand, now they go faster than Indonesia in the free trade agreements with us, negotiations. So for the EU, things have changed. And even before the tariffs, we want to make sure that things are changing for Indonesia too. And for us, it's so natural. As I said, the big market for Indonesia, India, US, and EU in terms of surplus. China obviously is the biggest trading partner of Indonesia, but there's no surplus. And is the biggest investment partner, of Indonesia, but mainly because it's Chinese investment in Indonesia. We, the EU, trade surplus for Indonesia, biggest market that is open. For us, it's natural that we should move very quickly to finishing and concluding CEPA. But I'm not sure that I mean, the Indonesian government says that they want to conclude. But as I said, there's this dimension of global value chain. And that is the key question to answer. So yes, new dynamic, but how this translates into concrete effect, we have to see. And then, in light of the US protectionism, will the EU be leading? Well, on the Paris Agreement and the environmental challenges, I think we are leading. And we were leading even when there was a Biden administration. We've been leading this fight for the last 15 years. And it's, you know, not because we are idealistic or we think that we know better or because we feel that we have more possibility. It's not that. We are like the Javanese. We are a lot of people on a small territory. And when you're a lot of people on a small territory, you suffer from bad environment. In Jakarta, the pollution level is above 200 milli, I don't know the measurement, but microns of things. You suffer. If you don't tackle, you live less. You simply live less. In Europe, we are a lot of people in a small territory. When you look at the map, Russia is 9/10 of the Eurasia, and the last bit is Europe. And we have 5 times the number of people in Russia. And the way the things are going, we're going to have soon 6 times the number of things in Russia. So we need to tackle all the environments. The water underground, the quality of the soil, the forest. And the ambassador of Indonesia in Brussels, he said, yeah, but you want to have legislation for how we sleep, how we wake up, how we drink, how we eat. But because we are in a situation that if we don't do that, we're going to live less on this earth. And if we don't stop what we are doing to a certain extent, the earth will continue, but it will continue without us. And the earth will be fine, but we will not be there. So we are a leading figure, and we're going to continue to do that. But we want to simplify, we want to make sure we are still competitive, and we are making sure that we prioritize. Not every measure in the environment has the same priority. So we're going to focus a bit more on the big things. But continuing environment policies, we're going to do. And then finally, if we should change our communication. Yes, entirely. We have to change the way we communicate. It's a different world. We had very recently a seminar for journalists. And you know, now people don't make the difference. Information, communication, advertising, and propaganda, these are 4 different things. And we Europeans, we still believe in information, but we're the only ones. We are still coming with boring numbers, boring slides, presentation, and things. Other big powers, they do TikTok videos to say that the happiest Muslims are in their countries when everyone knows that it is not the case. That this disinformation or propaganda, we do information with numbers and facts, but this doesn't convince people. I'm not saying we're going to do propaganda. I'm not saying that. But we have to make the EU model more attractive in terms of communications. We have to speak the language of today, which is images, short films on Medium, where people grasp the essence rather than long presentations. So yes, we need to change. We are not like you, young and dynamic. We are old Europeans, tired and thinking like 30 years ago. So it takes a bit more time, but Stefan has a lot of ideas. He's always like, let's go on TikTok. And I say, no, we are not allowed. It's the government authority that doesn't allow us. We don't care, we go on TikTok. I say, no, we're going to be fired. But we are thinking about better videos, better products, and we're going to keep working on that. Stefan is in charge of that.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we have some Australians here. The Australians are more advanced in using social media in diplomacy.
Totally.
Okay, so the last question would be from me. I would like to ask you to answer it candidly. So if we want to describe the word today, the adjectives that we use can be changing, shifting, or a more negative ones, uncertain, chaos, or what would you prefer to describe the word today?
No, I think for me, uncertain, because that we like it or not, and perhaps we don't realize, between 1950 and 2010, even though there have been very severe wars, Korean War, wars also in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, but overall, there's been some stability. If you look at history with, proper historian approach and put things in perspective, we've had, as I said in the beginning, an incredible economic growth that have lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty. We've had the lowest proportion of total population dying from wars. So this has lasted for some time, and it was because, there was a balance between Soviet Union and United States, but at the end, the United States has provided a certain form of security to the world. We may not agree with the type, or we may not agree or enjoy American imperialism, but there has been a zone of stability because the biggest, most powerful actor was acting according to rules that it had helped to set up, and that was in favor of its economic development, but they were rules. If now the most famous, the most powerful actor says that the rules are no longer rules and that it depends on every opportunity at every moment, this makes it an uncertain world. And the way we can mitigate that is for democracies like Indonesia and EU to agree that among ourselves at least the rules still exist. And that's what the EU is proposing and hoping for the relationship in between EU and Indonesia.
So would you say that autonomy still needs rules?
A world without any rules is a world where only the mighty will prevail, and there's always someone who is mightier than you.
Thank you very much. Then we will also have to define our own autonomy. So probably our next session would be to invite Indonesian government representative to explain how do we define autonomy within this uncertain world. Thank you very much, His Excellency Denis Chaibi. Thank you very much. I'm not going to conclude. I just want to have a request. Can we find a way to answer the 107 questions? Maybe we can talk, Stefan? So there are 107 questions in our file that would like to be responded. So as part of the cooperation, maybe we can find a way to provide answers to those questions. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sylvia Yazid. But we still have exchange as token of appreciation again, once again. So from this. Yes, please. This is from us. Yes. Now as the university secretary. Yes.
I'll explain it. So these are some products from us. Some are the tumbler and everything, but we also have some coffee and soaps produced by the business incubator in UNPAR, by the students and also by the small enterprises. So with this, we would like to say our thank you. Thank you.
And we also have another one from the European Union for Mbak Sylvie.
No, I forgot something that I wanted to say is 4 days and 70 years ago concluded the Bandung conference here. And it's also the 70 years of UNPAR. So I just wanted to say how happy I was to, in the Bandung spirit, be in Bandung 70 years after.
Oh, we still have another one, Mbak Sil, for the... Thank you very much.
We need this. Yes, for the pen.
We forgot that.
So this was supposed to be given by the rector. Pak, would you like? So because we signed an MOU, this is a pen in a beautiful box as a signature that we are going to continue this cooperation. So a symbol of commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And please remain on the stage. We also would like to invite our Vice Rector for Cooperation and Alumni to give a token of appreciation for the Deputy Head of Mission, Pak Stephen. Yes. You want to say something?
No, I hope you are still all fine and we have not been bothering you too much. But I wanted to also to say maybe a special thanks, especially to the rector and to the team for all their efforts, and also for something which is not only symbolic but that matters to us. You have played the European Union anthem, the Ode to Joy. And I would like to invite the students just to Google and to read the words and the spirit of this anthem. This is about brotherhood. So, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, united in diversity, is not only in Indonesia but also in the EU and in this spirit. Thank you again for coming and somehow for your brotherhood. So thank you. Terima kasih banyak.
We would like to give you some token of appreciation. Stefan is the one that has put a lot of effort and also resiliently and persistently tried to invite His Excellency Denis Chaibi to come here. So thank you so much. And we have some gift for you as well.
Thank you very much. You may now be seated. Once again, let's give them a round of applause for Pak Denis and Pak Stephen. As we come to close this event, I would like to thank you once again for your participation and your continued enthusiasm in making this event possible. It has been a pleasure serving you as the host for today's event. I hope you find it inspiring, informative, and engaging. Thank you very much for joining UNPAR EU 2025.